are going to invite back to the podium Karl Erik Haug and Sergey Paltsev for the final dialogue session. And as you can see, there are 5 chairs, so we're going to re-invite Asgeir Tomasgaard as well to join us, to contribute to concluding and wrapping things up together with the expert panel, of course, and potential questions from the audience. And I would actually like to start. So Asgeir, if you sit at the end, and I can sit here. I'm going to ask a question that has been trending all day, I've been told, in Slido, and that I think we have the perfect place for now. It's about war, so I'm going to look at you, Karl Erik. And this is the question, this is the background. Norway is today a war profiteer and a climate change profiteer based on fossil fuel exports. What are our moral obligations at this crucial historical moment? Because we've been talking and talking and talking all day, but what are we actually doing at the end of the day?
That's a great question. I know that it's also been posed to the Prime Minister and the government. But of course, it's a problem that Norway is a war profiteer. So from my point of view, we should at least spend much of that money on Ukraine, supporting Ukraine. Because, I mean, we have earned about 1,000 billion Norwegian crowns extra each year since 2022. That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money. And I mean, Norway keeps saying that we are actually financing to a good degree.
Yeah, I do agree, but I mean, we are in a quite special place when it comes to the rest of Europe and the rest of the world. I mean, we don't need to borrow to support Ukraine. The rest of Europe is basically borrowing money to support Ukraine. So, from my point of view, we have an obligation.
Yeah. You're nodding, Sergey. I mean, because we didn't say that, but you're originally from Belarus, living in...
Even more complicated. Originally from Kazakhstan.
Ooh, from Kazakhstan.
But I have relatives both in Belarus, Russia, and Ukraine.
And you're living in the States.
And I'm living in the States. And I fully support that notion.
Yeah.
And we have heard from Yulia today kind of how brave the people of Ukraine and trying to handle all this situation. I know that from the first hand because I have relatives there, and I think this type of thinking is going to be extremely appreciated, and they need that. They need that desperately.
And I'm looking at you now, Asgeir, adding on a question from the audience, which is related. We've been talking about addition versus transition today, that there is an addition of energy, and I think Heite Simmers was the first one who talked about that. So the question is, how can the EU phase out fossil fuel systems and address minimum viable scale issues? And how is Norway planning its oil and gas phase out? You mentioned Norwegian natural gas is an important part of the European energy system now, after the invasion of Ukraine. But we have to think further and into the climate goal achievements as well. So this discussion is popping up from time to time in Norway, but not often enough, probably.
It's a good question and an interesting question, and actually related to what I'm doing my research on myself. That's how do we do the transition of the system. And my personal opinion, I think we have seen on graphs today as well, and my research shows and other people's research show that there will be fossil fuels in the mix in 2050, 2060, and will be needed. At one point, at least in Western countries, that needs to be abated. So we cannot afford to have unabated fossil fuels in the mix in regions like Europe if we want to reach the 2 degree or even 2.2 degree target that was mentioned. So in some respect, if you look at Norway's position, I think if you look at natural gas around the world, there is plenty of natural gas available that is not explored. In Norway, I think the natural gas will go in decline somewhere in the next decade, and the question is, will that happen before Europe has been able to replace that natural gas with sufficient amounts of renewables?
What do you
This is a timing question.
What do you think?
My research shows that it would be very beneficial for Europe to have Norwegian low-emission or zero-emission natural gas value chains, where CCS and hydrogen, blue hydrogen, go hand in hand by building up the renewables.
So and when you say beneficial, beneficial for whom or for what?
Mostly for the decarbonization of industry. If you want to decarbonize European industry, then you would need to have a carbon capture and storage, again supported by the natural gas industry, but mostly used in industry, I would say. You would need to have hydrogen. The volumes of hydrogen, if you want to keep the industrial structure as it is today, and that's not for sure that this will happen, but if you want to keep it, you would need millions of tons, tens of millions of tons of hydrogen. And as someone mentioned earlier today, it's a factor 4 to 5 more expensive to produce that by electrolysis today than by natural gas. And what our models show is that when we move towards 2050, 2/3 will be green hydrogen. But there is a transition going on in the next 25 years.
Yeah. Charles, I didn't say that when I introduced you, but you also have a long background from NGOs and working with environmental topics, and you've been advocating for energy efficiency. You're one of the few who has mentioned that today, and you also brought up land use, indigenous rights, and so on. What is, from the United Nations, the global perspective, when you're listening to this discussion, what are your thoughts? Are we going in the right direction?
We are starting to go in the right direction in terms of implementation. We have a huge amount of paper and a hard science-based analysis to tell us what the right direction is, but we're not responding anything like fast enough. I would mention that, in my view, the SDG text is the best UN text on sustainable development since 1992. We have a game plan, which is 30 pages long. It has goals and targets in it. We now have indicators. We didn't have that with Agenda 21. We had a, 400-page document with X chapters, which was absolutely right, but was totally impenetrable. I think one of the things that governments should be doing at a strategic level is making their selection, not of the SDGs they pick, but the SDG targets, which now have indicators, because I think this gives you a game plan on all the issues. Perhaps less so on climate change, because they deferred to the UN, they deferred to the Climate Change Convention, as they should have done. But we know absolutely what we need to do. The issue is not now of ignorance, it's now of implementation. It has been for a long time. Yep. And it is of the political will behind that. And I would say that one of the SDGs, the one that my particular part of UNEP had a lot to do with, was sustainable consumption and production. And I'm glad that finally the demand side of the equation has risen, because we're not going to solve this from the supply side. No. We absolutely need to deal with the consumption side. I don't particularly like the word responsible consumption, because I'm not quite sure what it is. It is socially and environmentally sustainable consumption, which is what we need. This is a responsibility of consumers, ultimately, but consumers also include government procurers. They include those who are responsible for, they include retailers, they include a large part of the supply chain. And I think we have to move the responsibility for sustainability up to the retail end of the supply chain.
I think I have to stop you there, because I would like for the expert panel as well to get some final reflections. And I see we are, once again, time is running away from us. Reinhard Madlener, I would like to start with you. You're Professor of Energy Economics and Management at the RWTH Aachen University. Economy is your field. What is your reflection or question or challenge to the panel?
I want to share a thought that actually fits nicely to the last sentence that was said, responsible consumption, but it relates to what Sergey posted or postulated. He said we should move action to the local level in a way. Maybe it was out of context, maybe maybe you meant this mainly for resilience action, whatever, but I want to put it into the context of today's world with the geopolitical turbulences. The last days we discussed AI, we discussed data centers, large and small ones, and taking action locally or nationally or supranationally. So I wonder in today's times whether this implies argumentation towards more local action or quite the opposite, that because of all these crises we are facing, we should think more in centralized decision-making, centralized action, or do we just need both? Is it a non-issue, or does any of the panelists have something to say connecting to this thought? How much local, how much global, national?
Global, yeah.
I can start and then you can expand. I fully agree. I think if you are going to empower local decision makers, local entrepreneurs, and they will bring the solutions which are closer related to what the constituents mean. And I fully agree with you that if we are not going to make sure that we are changing behavior on the demand side, that it will be very, very difficult to achieve sustainability goals, energy transition goals, and other goals. And historically, well, I've been at MIT for almost 25 years, and historically we thought, okay, well, if we will have right regulations, if we will work on these wonderful programs of global carbon tax, UNFCCC, whatever, well, then the problem is going to be accelerated and kind of, well, the solution of the problem is going to be accelerated. It didn't happen. So we know that we don't have any global carbon tax. We know that the world is getting even more fragmented. So then we thought, okay, if we are going to make sure that we pose that on the industry, on the companies, that they are responsible. And well, to tell you the truth, I had a conversation with Yara, and I was very curious, asking her, well, why are you supporting ETS? Well, that's extra price which you are going to pay if you're a business. Well, that's not a good decision. Why you want to have something more expensive rather than less expensive? And she gave me an honest answer because, well, that's what we truly believe in. That's where we need to go. And even if it's going to mean that, well, our profit margin is going to be a little bit lower, the benefits from what we are going to get is going to outweigh. Unfortunately, I think you're in a very rare position and a very rare company who are still making those statements. If you're going to take a look at a lot of companies who used to have those net zero targets by 2050 and so on their website, well, in a lot of them, they're gone. They're not there yet anymore. So kind of point number two, well, we tried government regulation. It didn't work very well. Industry, some responsible parties doing well. But if we are not going to make sure that it is fully supported by the consumers, that you understand why you are doing that, you are not going to make a progress. So that's why the local decision-making, local actions are extremely, even more important, and not just for resilience and sustainability, for many other actions.
Does anyone want to add on? I mean, you're representing the United Nations. I mean, which has been, how should we put it, been declining in its influential power? Is that a right way to put it?
Yeah, no, that's definitely a right way to put it. I mean, the multilateral system and international law are under attack, and they're being degraded. I mean, my personal opinion, and I should say that, is that we urgently need to close the gap between civil society and the UN and international institutions and the body of international law. The UN and those institutions need civil society far more than we did before. Both are being eroded in terms of the number of people who, I mean, the NGO sector, I know NGOs that have lost 20% of their staff. You know, parts of the UN have lost 20% of its staff. Yet what you have in those bodies is you have a community of people who've been working on these issues, and by far the majority of whom are totally committed to them and are very experienced in them. We can plug gaps by coming together, and it's difficult for institutions to come together. We don't have to formally come together. You just have to create effective coalitions for what is known as collective impact. And there's a methodology to do this, and it's been proven, and there are ways to do this around specific issues. So, I mean, that is how, since I left the UN, I've decided I'm going to spend the rest of my time that I'm active is trying to build those kind of collective impact coalitions. And I think that's key. And just to say one other thing, I totally agree that action at the local level is really important, also for innovation. Central governments are not going to come up with all the solutions to the problems we face. You're going to need the innovation that's going to happen from having committed people working on this at local level, and particularly local government people who are actually more in touch with the citizenry than the people who sit in the capital.
Karl Erik, I would like to have your perspective on this. I mean, because we see larger organizations are crumbling in many ways. Have you been naive?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think that we can agree upon the solutions here. But I mean, the question is how to do it. Because right now we don't know. Because the world aren't working the way it did before. I mean, when the US are targeting members of the criminal court because they are saying the wrong things, how should we make national society work? How should we expect it to work? So I mean, the problem now is that we really don't know how to make this cooperation happen. If I should recommend a book, I do read books. Alexander Stubb, the Finnish president, wrote this book about the New World Order. And he's painting this picture about uncertainty and how things is changing, and things changing fast. And he's talking about the power triangle, the West, the East, and the South. I don't know if that it's a correct observation, but anyway, the real thing now is that the world is uncertain, and we don't know how to handle it, because all the institutions, all the things we have believed in is gone. The world is changing. So, I mean, the question is not what we should do, it's how should we do it, and who should do it.
Yeah, I was thinking, are we going to end there for the conference today?
Read the books. I like that suggestion.
Yeah,
read the books.
Read the books and read books.
And people still reading books? Wow. Okay, I'm impressed. Because my daughters, well, all they do is just looking at the Instagram or other things. Well, sometimes they read. If they will listen, they will be mad at me because they recently got very good books. But that's another thing, that attention span is getting shorter and shorter. Yeah. And so
what does that do with our capacity to educate ourselves? You know what? I would have loved to invite the rest of the expert panel to open for the questions, but I actually think we have to stop there. And you've given us a lot of food for thought. The panel, the experts, the audience. And as someone said, we're not as optimistic this time as we used to be. We have to be realistic as well. So we'll have to see. I think keeping on gathering, meeting people, that at least is an important part of what the conference is doing. So, yeah, I just think we have to say thank you so much to the panel for coming here. Sorry that I'm not lifting the spirit anymore at this moment, but I know that everyone here is working on the energy transition, and I'm going to have 2 words with Asgeir at the end. So now I would just like everyone to say thank you to the panel, Karl Erik Haug, Charles Arden-Clark, and Sergey Paltsev. Give them a nice warm of applause. You can step down. Thank you. And Asgeir, at the end, because this is the 10th edition of the Energy Transition Conference, and it is fair to say that there are a lot of bad news. I mean, one thing is wars and conflicts, but the emission cuts are not happening at the desired speed, the global temperature is still rising, and the energy transition is moving too slowly. So this is a pretty stupid question maybe, but are you still optimistic about the energy transition? I mean, you've been doing this for 10 years now, this conference and this week.
I would have thought 10 years ago that we would have come further now, and the reason for that is that we know quite well how to do it. We have to reduce demand, we have to become more efficient, We have renewables that we could build if society wants them at a price which doesn't need subsidies. And we know most of the technologies we need to decarbonize industry. And I think one would have thought 10 years ago that maybe markets can fix this with a little bit of help from the national states and the European Commission and global cooperation. But this is where I think we have failed a little bit. Yep. For me, it's like national security. That's something that governments are responsible for. That's something that European cooperation and national organizations like the UN are responsible for. So now that's very much intertwined with the energy transition, and that means that we also need to take a collective responsibility both in the private sector and in the government sector. And I think we as academics can help by creating places like this to discuss this. But there is a need for a real effort.
Absolutely.
At this stage.
From all sectors and on all levels.
The good news is we know more or less how to do it.
Well, we've known that for quite some time, I would argue. But
that's the bad news.
Yeah, that's the bad news. So what about the transition initiative? I mean, you've done this for 10 years. Are there things ahead that indicate some kind of change, or are you doing things differently?
Yes, I think what we will do, we have a 10-year celebration. In the next 10 years, we will widen out our scope. We will invite more partners. We will try to create more arenas like this. So we'll try to continue the work.
Keep the continuum up.
Keep the continuum.
Yeah.
And well, you have seen on the screens during the day some of the partners we have today, and we are really looking forward to extend the networks that we have in the Energy Transition Initiative, because we think really this is the type of arenas that we need more of.
And this audience, either they've been here physically or digitally, are also invited to evaluate and give inputs and thoughts on the way forward for the Energy Transition Week or even the conference.
We start to work with next year's program in 1 month.
Yeah, of course you do. So there's going to be an evaluation form which will be sent out on Friday, but there's also the QR codes at the back of the room, and I think it's going to be put on the screens as well. There is a code that you can use. There it is. Your opinion is wanted. So, is there anything else you would like to add before we say good day?
I think I need to thank all the people that has helped making this possible. We have, as you see, the expert panel on the front row. Many of those and additional people as well have been very active in shaping the program. We have a program committee that's been working since June last year. I want to thank all of those. And not the least, I want to thank the organization committee, local organization committee that works to make this happen. And personally, I'm a little bit subjective, but I think it's been fantastic. Thank you.
You've been doing a great job. I think we should all give them all a round of applause. So, final words. This is just some final practical info. So in the name of sustainability and circularity, please leave your name tags when you're exiting the building close to the wardrobe. There's going to be some boxes where you can put your name tags. And for those attending the conference dinner, I think you know who you are. There are 2 buses ready to leave at 4:45, which is in approximately half an hour. They will drive over to the hotel where the dinner is at 4:45. Then there's a reception. For those not taking the bus, the reception starts at 5:15. So please be there in due time, and the dinner starts immediately after the reception finishes. So that's it for today, folks. Thank you for attending, and good luck with next year's planning, starting in 1 month. So thank you.
And thank you.
Thank you.